Members can leave the chamber as quickly and as quietly. We shall move to the valedictories. And I give the call to the honourable member for Moreton.
Thank you, Speaker. And I begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people and thank them for their strong and continuing stewardship. The first word I heard in this place was Aunty Matilda House-Williams saying, "Welcome." Matilda meant it, and I've always felt welcome on Ngunnawal traditional lands over the last 18 years. The second word I heard here was sorry. Kevin Rudd's small word echoed big all around the nation and all around the world. It was long overdue and vital for us to acknowledge the manifest wrongs committed against our First Nations peoples. That word sorry improved our international standing. So I heard welcome and sorry on my first day, and actually my best day in Parliament. And sorry. And I'm forever thankful that Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard and Jenny Macklin made that apology to the stolen generations happen. Since that first day, Uncle Pat Dodson spoke of the oldest art on earth being Aboriginal works in Western Australia. Auntie Linda Burney talks of the oldest constructions in the world being Koori fish traps at Brewarrina. And my almost cousin-in-law, Marion Scrimgeour, has also helped guide me through our nation's duality. I once taught English for 11 years, but now I know that the oldest words on earth are Aboriginal words. The old and the new, the black and the white, the then and the now and the every when. Pat, Linda, Marion and so many other First Nations colleagues and friends like Peter Brown and Wayne Long in St George, if you're listening, who have helped me better understand our past. What Australian wouldn't be proud of such rich history? Our then improves the now and uplifts all our tomorrows. And today, Prime Minister Albanese delivered the 17th Closing the Gap speech. As he said, there is much work to be done, but I know that our nation's future will always be brighter when truly reconciled with our past. Yeats says, "Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart." But I know that our First Nations peoples are hopeful despite all. Most know how to hope without bitterness. When I was first a candidate, I remember a myopic Prime Minister who refused to say sorry. John Howard even accused those who spoke the truth of having a black armband view of history. At least armbands let people see the future. A white blindfold shows them nothing. And where there is no vision, the people perish. What is right will always outlast the denial of our history. Fighting flags and other divisive culture wars are not the answer. This place doesn't need any more flag inspectors. There is serious work to be done in our nation, as the Prime Minister and the Opposition Leader detailed today. Work to be done in our schools, in our workplaces, in our prisons, and most of all, in our hearts. And so in this, my final speech, I propose a word to sit alongside those first big words like welcome and sorry. And the word I humbly offer is soon. Soon doesn't mean I seek another referendum to settle down or a vote on an advisory body. Soon is simply to reassure all First Nations mob that the Labor Party won't ever forget you. Soon because we believe in a nation with justice and dignity at its core. Soon because Labor has a positive vision for our nation. I say soon in the context of 100,000 years of history and the everywhen, that Indigenous concept of time where the past, present and future are all interconnected. Sometimes those opposite try to distract you from their perfidy. They weaponise their very democracy and the idea of a First Nations advisory body or Makarrata or treaty. But hope and love will trump fear and division. Soon. So right now I'm proud to stand in front of that flag, that Murray flag. I don't want to obliterate 60,000 years of history. I want to celebrate it. And I do so because I'm a patriotic Australian who knows our nation's history. No leader can prepare for the future if they're busy running from the past. One of those flags up there comes from Queensland, from the Torres Strait, Now, that's a long way from here. Some people don't realise just how big Queensland is, or how far away the Torres Strait is. Queensland is larger than about 183 countries, and we're also weirder than 183 other countries, with respect, Speaker. The first Blackfeet ever to set foot on this continent did so in Queensland, about 5,000 generations ago. The first Whitefoot, too, a Dutch sailor, Wilhelm Jensen, in 1606, up near Weipa in far north Queensland. And Queensland is where Lieutenant James Cook first raised his flag to claim present-day Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania for the British Crown. We were nearly 60 years ahead of Fremantle and Hindmarsh, claiming Western Australia and South Australia, respectively. My point is that Queensland is different. We know how to lead the way. Like we did with Eddie Mabo and native title, adversity helps us bend towards a greater truth, and despite the recent referendum result, I know that our Constitution, this little document, will eventually include our First Nations people. Our country needs the truth writ large rather than lies writ small. This, remember, a British Act of Parliament was passed by British white men with beards in Westminster. One day, soon, our Constitution will be amended by the modern men and women of Australia. And I remind those opposite that every election day our nation divides. But it is not a tear. Tears are sometimes shed, but it is not a tear. Australian democracy is a zip, and at 6 p.m, upon the counting of ballot boxes, the nation clicks right back together, irrespective of the results. Waging a fear campaign against this healthy democratic division is a failure to fundamentally understand Australians. We're much politically smarter than that. We're not scared of ballots or uncomfortable truths. In the Voice referendum, the Coalition campaigned on vote no and get nothing. And that's exactly what they delivered. Of course, I respect the democratic decision of the public because I'm passionate about democracy and I believe in democracy, but I also believe in justice. So soon, in the context of 5,000 generations, does not mean tomorrow, but soon is better than never. Soon we will have a reconciled nation. A change is going to come. I know this because 6,286,889 full people voted yes on October 14, 2023. In Moreton, in my multicultural community, 49.32% voted yes. And in the 16 months since, there have been more yes voters born and arriving, while no voters are slowly but surely fading away. A change is going to come, not now but soon. And while we're talking about changing this document, constitutional change, the Republican part of me requires some little placation. I will do that rather than talking about negative gearing or franking credits. I was at a citizenship ceremony in Brisbane in late November, standing next to a life-size portrait of King Charles III. Now, I love citizenship ceremonies. They're the best part of my job as an MP. And normally I do them with Lewis Lee, who's sitting up in the gallery there. But standing there as someone who had Queen Elizabeth on the English throne for 57 years, I realised that there's only space for one monarch in Queensland, and my one true king will always be Wally Lewis. A change is going to come. When Arthur Phillip arrived in Sydney Harbour with 11 ships filled with convicts, it was only 5 years after the American War of Independence and just 18 months before the French Revolution kicked off. That Sydney Cove experiment sandwiched between crucial revolutions with fervour for change, dangerous ideas like freedom and equality, bookending our convict change. Eventually, the United States would help deliver our Westminster system of government, where we have senators, not lords. Except you, Murray, obviously. And as Graham Perrett, I think our nation also owes a debt to the French and their notion of liberty, equality and fraternity. There are so many reasons to be a republic, including the 1 million Australians with Chinese links, or 1 million Indian Australians like my wife's family, the Afghan Cameliers and Italians, even the Italians, Prime Minister, the Germans and Vietnamese, the Koreans and Somalis and Sudanese and all those other connections that make our nation the tastiest salad on earth. Because Tony Burke told me 20 years ago that, unlike melting pots, salads protect the individual flavours of all ingredients. And salads are healthier too, apparently. So my Italian, Irish and French tangle roots don't define the tree. Australian soil lets each tree grow their own way. So I refuse to believe that no Australian is good enough to be our head of state. It won't ever be easy to change this document, I know that, but the harder fought, the better won. So, I know it's been a while, but 3 words: after, welcome, sorry and soon. I now turn to some thanks. And I start with my wife, Lee, the woman who talked me into joining the Labor Party because she was sick of me whinging about John Howard. Thanks for putting up with me, Lee, through thick and thin. Not as thin as you would like, but still. At the Class of 07 Baby MP talk, we were told that 85% of federal marriages fail due to long periods away from home, too many drinks and nighttime shenanigans. Sadly, I've missed all of that. Although once late at night in Monaco, Darren Chester did offer me a lift home. We'll never know how things might have worked out, Darren. But seriously, Lee, I am the luckiest bloke in the world to avoid that 85%. It helps that I started with a wife who's smart, tough and funny, and a delicious dollop of beautiful as well. Thanks for raising our wonderful boys, Stanley, who's at work, and Leo, while kicking off your own amazing legal career. At best, I was a part-time assistant. I remember once when the Comcar pulled up into our driveway in Moreton after a fun week in Canberra with Darren, and I remember you were pushing a kid's mattress out the upstairs window, and gracefully you yelled out, "Graham, hose the vomit off this mattress and put it out in the sunshine and get up here and help with your bloody kids." Speaker, I'm just checking. Lee doesn't have a right of reply or anything. Those should be good. Anyway, like every MP with young kids, I nearly got back in that Comcar. But I didn't, because you're my big, big love, and you taught me that even the running kind can learn how to stay. So, Lee, thanks also for reminding me constantly that I was a part of the Labor government that abolished the $5,000 baby bonus while you were pregnant with Leo. Jim, I look forward to us both being under the same roof rather than working 1,000 miles from home and 2,000 miles from each other. Stanley was here for my first speech. He was up in that top gallery of a babe in his mother's arms. He's now at work in uni, and his younger brother Leo is here today, both growing into fine young men who are caring and kind. Most men either try to live up to their father's expectations or attempt to make up for their failures. I'm certainly in the latter camp, but I do sometimes wonder what camp my boys will be in. I've heard many politicians say in their valedictory speeches that they're leaving to spend more time with their families. Well, I've checked with the Prime Minister and Leo. That's not compulsory. So I love you both very much, Stanley and Leo, and I look forward to watching where you put your oversized feet out in the world, whatever paths you choose. Remember the golden rules of our household. 1, be kind. 2, work hard. And 3, vote Labor all your life. Also, hello to my sisters Kerry and Megan. You're both still Narragar. And hi to my friends Annie, Phillida, Chris, who are listening in the United States. Go Eagles. The majority of Queensland MPs in the 42nd Parliament were Labor, 15 out of 29. Sadly, we let the nation down recently at the last election. There are 4 party leaders from Queensland, and I acknowledge 2 of them sitting here. And sadly, none of those 4 Queensland party leaders have a positive plan for our nation. It does look tough for Queensland Labor right now, but that is when my state's true character shines through. In the late 1800s, when employers were crushing worker dissent, the shearers at Barcaldine formed a political party. Soon after, in 1899, Queensland delivered the first Labor government anywhere in the world. When Joe Not quite a fortnight, sadly. When Joe and his gerrymander were outlawing street protests and dissent in the 70s, the Saints responded by delivering punk to the world. Eddie Mabo's Truth showed that terra nullius is to be a lie, and then Paul Keating delivered the native title to our nation. Some people think that north of the Tweed is a conservative state, but we actually have a radical heart. I know Queenslanders will come through at the next election, starting with Julianne Campbell in Moreton and a few others around. I'll be working hard to make sure that happens, as will the wonderful Labor volunteers in Moreton. Not Gorton.
Did you say Gorton?
No, Moreton. There are way too many people to mention, but I thank them for turning out at pre-poll and on election day, and for door-knocking and phone calls and doing visibility and chatting to friends and neighbours about the mighty Labor Party's positive plan for this nation. Thank you to all my campaign directors, Joe Justo, Karen Struthers, the fearless Ros McLennan, the always astute Terry Wood, Julianne Campbell, and finally the woman who is the heart and soul of the Progressive Labor Party on the south side of Brisbane, my good friend Sasha Marin, sitting in the advisers box. In my opinion, Sasha's the best thing to ever come out of Lightning Ridge, and that includes opals. When I was first elected, there was no NBN or NDIS. Schools weren't fairly funded, and the perils of climate change were largely being ignored. I'm proud that Labor provided Australians with high-speed internet access. Labor created the world-first disability insurance scheme. We implemented the Gonski education reforms, or are implementing, sorry. We introduced Commonwealth-paid parental leave, and it was Labor that enshrined net zero emissions by 2050, and I could go on. All those reforms are due to Moreton volunteers like Alana, Sasha and others like them, obviously led by Ros and Sasha and Terry. Thank you all. In every one of my campaigns, I've received great assistance from the trade union movement, from the CFMEU and UWU and the MEDIs, QTU and QIEU, my union, but especially from Rowan, Emery, Angus and others at the amazing AMWU. Thank you, comrades, one and all. The unity of Labor is the hope of the world. It was true in Barcaldine back in 1891, and it's still true today, while political parties trot out leaders who masquerade as hard men and friends of the poor. There's a great line in one of my favourite movies, Mattawan. There ain't but two sides in this world, them that work and them that don't, and I'm proud to be on the side of the workers. I believe the Labor Party is the political wing of the union movement. If we ever lose this core purpose, we will be set adrift. I've seen up close what happens to a party when it is led by a soulless shapeshifter with no moral core. That way destruction lies. Labor must keep union values in our heart and our industrial comrades right alongside. This combination can achieve a fairer Australian society. And the modern union movement looks like modern Australia. People like Sally McManus, Michelle O'Neill, Wendy Streets, who I think is in the gallery, Jed Carney, to name just a few. They're the modern unionists. And a special shout-out to the class of 2000 Organising Works graduates. There's one and there's another. Mary Doyle and Senator Lisa Darmanin, 3 from the one class in federal parliament, must surely be a record. Speaker, in my first speech I talked about bringing a bit more poetry into parliament. This isn't something I've always managed in every one of my TLAB speeches, but there is a verse from that tragic Australian poet Adam Lindsay Gordon that I've loved ever since high school. Life is merely froth and bubble, two things stand in stone, kindness in another's trouble and courage in your own. I haven't always been as kind as I could, nor as courageous as I needed to be, but I've done my best. And so to all of my staff, past and present, who have put up with my lack of kindness and or courage, I say thank you, especially to Sasha Marin, my Chief of Staff, Lee Lunny, Michelle Howe, who's also sitting over in the advisers box, Isaac Kavanagh, also over in the box. Don't you have work to do, you three? And Peter Shaw, who's actually been with me for 18 years, and in that time has never once laughed at my jokes. To Kane, Kylie, Kate, Norma, Matt, Michelle, Sarah, Ben, Jen, Sandy and Angus and so many other wonderful people, thanks for looking after the light on the hill in Moreton. I know that Jules Campbell will tend the same flame with a little bit of help from you. Not because we ask you to, but because you feel you must, because you all believe in providing kindness during another's trouble. So thank you all. Thank you all. I thank all the MPs and senators who've helped out in Moreton over the years. especially Tanya Plibersek, Mark Dreyfus, Brendan O'Connor, Penny Wong and Murray Watt for the friendship, guidance and good humour. To my good friend and neighbour, Jim Chalmers, I still vividly recall all the doors we've knocked on together and the good times we've had at the Sunnybank Tavern after eating way too much at the Landmark. Thank you, Jim. Thanks to you too, Mr Speaker, for the many events we've shared, and also Senator Anthony Chisholm, who I'm not sure is here, who was, when he was State Secretary, was prepared to take on organised motorcycle gangs and their supporters in Moreton. You ask him about it. That was during that most difficult elections in 2013 where Labor lost 17 seats. But in Moreton, we actually received a swing to me. Thanks, Chiz. To all the voters in Moreton who are prepared to support Labor throughout the last 7 elections, I say thank you. All MPs think their electorates are special, but multicultural Moreton really is. The word privilege is thrown around a lot, but I really do feel privileged to have represented all my different communities. I'm proud of how we work together, how we've taken the time to listen to each other's points of view and how we've learned from each other, how we share cultural and religious celebrations and stay connected despite our differences. This occurs because of the generosity of people like Lewis Lee, OAM, who's up in the gallery next to Jocelyn. I'm well paid to do my job, but Lewis is a volunteer, as his lovely wife Jocelyn can attest. Lewis leads by example. He has managed 61 citizenship ceremonies and fosters important community connections by promoting and attending cross-cultural events. Our country needs more people like Lewis. They are the glue that holds us together. And to those who can never bring themselves to vote for me, I can't tell you how much I appreciated working for you, despite having parliamentary privilege. There are so many great friends and good comrades in the Moreton community and the Labor caucus. There's too many good people to mention, so it would be easy if I only mention the bad ones. You're first, Rob Mitchell. No, just kidding. Where's Josh Wilson? Who flogged me at tennis again this morning. It's especially lucky that Nick Champion, my good friend Nick Champion, has left the parliament, but I do take this opportunity to mention that, despite one spurious media report to the contrary, I always beat Nick Champion when we played squash. On several occasions, the gymnasium staff asked us to stop swearing loudly, and I assert that all the foul language was exclusively Nick Champion's. In another class of 07 valedictory speak, Bill Shorten tabled a list of all of his 192 staff to avoid reading them all into Hansard. So in a similar spirit, I table the names of all the people I've injured on the football, rugby, touch football, basketball and netball courts by playing too enthusiastic. Your name's on there, Ed, don't worry. So I'll table that too. But to be fair, 28 of the names on this list are Keith Wallahan's. So I do particularly thank Andy Turnbull for making so much sporting diplomacy and cross-party friendship possible in this place. Sport is a great way to make unusual friendships and international connections that are useful for this nation. Those contacts all help lubricate the gears of our wonderful democracy. And early morning sport also gets you to bed early, because nothing good happens in Canberra after midnight. And I say that with all respect to Darren Chester. Thanks to all the co-chairs of the parliamentary friendship groups I've been involved with over the last 18 years. I've enjoyed working with Rowan Ramsey, Ken Wyatt and Judy Moylan to fight diabetes. Similarly, I've enjoyed championing Red Cross, Amnesty, anti-death penalty, support for Palestine, education and arts groups, especially arts groups, and several countries. The diplomats and lobbyists who work in Canberra to ensure that politicians are better informed do a good job. Declared registered lobbyists can make for better policy positions. As long as there is no secrecy, I believe that they're an important part of this fragile, beautiful thing called democracy. I especially want to mention the Parliamentary Friends of LGBTIQA+ group that I helped form with Warren Entsch a long time ago and Senator Sarah Hanson-Young. I know it's in good hands, but with my good friend and comrade Louise Pratt and Warren leaving soon, I'm concerned that the 48th Parliament might not be ready for the US-style attacks directed at the trans community. In Queensland, in fact, some might say those attacks are already here. Bullies and fascists always seek small groups to target. They are not alone in seeking out the trans community in this way, trying to turn real people into another. Remember that Jesus Christ is no weather vane. He loves all people always, not some people sometimes. He loves they and them and even you. And perhaps if some politicians have become obsessed with how kids go to the loo, maybe it's time to leave the cult and go see a therapist. Dehumanising due to difference is a pathway to hell. It hollows out communities wherever it occurs, everywhere from Yappin to Yeppoon. But sometimes bathrooms and pronouns and flags are merely political dead cats to distract from 34 criminal indictments or a nuclear policy with all the structural integrity of wet cardboard. Nevertheless, such attacks can be dangerous for people. An ABS study found that nearly 30% of trans Australians had experienced suicidal thoughts. Suicidal ideation due to gender dysphoria is real. The Coalition held a royal commission into the home insulation program following the deaths of 4 young workers. So I'm placing you all on notice right now. If you let politicians determine private health matters, kids will die. The young trans community needs kindness, courage and champions working for them right here under the big flag, because this building belongs to all Australians. Good people don't ever let bullies win elections via targeting the vulnerable. So I know that the Parliamentary Friends of LGBTIQA+ will never let caring become a crime. It's also been an honour to work with all, well, actually not all, nearly all of the chairs and deputy chairs of all the parliamentary committees I've been on. I did name that person, but my office said to take it out. So, good committees where there is respect and professionalism are an essential part of this parliament, essential for policy and friendships and the strange links that glue this building together, glue that is needed during the hard times of politics. I spent way too much time with Keith Pitt in this, the 47th Parliament, and also the late Kevin Andrews dealing with family law reform in the 46th Parliament, and Karen Andrews in the 45th Parliament, but all effective committees bond over doing the right thing for this nation. My Liberal, National, Greens and Independent colleagues have all been passionate about their communities and their policies, and I've always respected their contributions, despite the fact they're usually wrong. So, no, just kidding. Nevertheless, thank you for your contributions, for your professionalism and for your friendship. Committees don't function without their secretaries, so thank you to all those helpful people who are behind the scenes, but they make it all work. And there are a lot of them in this building, and I think my friends Anna and Siobhan are in the building somewhere at the moment. There they are. And all the librarians, the Hansard and all the rest who make this place very easy for politicians to work in. I give a special thanks to the Leader of the House in his capacity as Leader of the Band. Thanks for inviting me into Left, Right, Out. I've had an absolute blast. And finally, we did our own original song last Tuesday. I'll leave that to the Leader of the House to reveal when it's coming out. Playing with the Wiggles in the Great Hall was a highlight, and for the Pharmacy Guild in the same venue. And that gig only cost Mark Butler $26.5 billion over 5 years. Gigs with some of my rock heroes like Mark Callaghan and Buzz Bidstrup were amazing, but truly not as much fun as jamming here on a Tuesday night. Thank you for the music and friendship, and I look forward to buying that single. I also thank John, Brendan, Sharon and Brendan from my old band, Once I Killed a Gopher with a Stick, yes, that's their name, for doing fundraising gigs every 3 years for me since 2004. To the men and women of the Press Gallery, who I've always seen as an essential part of a healthy democracy. I don't think any other parliament in the world has put the press inside the building, complicit in this precious grand project called democracy. Obviously, that means you must do so much more than provide space in a Harvey Norman catalogue. Unfortunately for me, you've always accurately reported what I said, which has been the source of half my troubles. As the media business model changes, I wish you all the best in your devotion to truth. And now that the news and social media are polarised by design, some monsters are skillfully and ruthlessly exploiting fear and ignorance. The consent of the governed is harder to corral, and more journalists are being killed in the line of duty or arrested or sued for just doing their job. Nevertheless, the job of a good journalist, like a good politician, is to seek the truth and make it known. And so in this cold, hard, complicated post-truth world, I hope that the honour in journalism continues provide you all with purpose rather than inconvenience, and clicks too, and paid subscribers, because good journalism costs money. Unfortunately, so does bad journalism, but that's a whole other problem for Rupert and Lachlan. May you never be deserted by the Muse and anonymous sources. And if you ever run out of former politicians prepared to comment on the politics of the day, don't ever phone me. Prime Minister, I want to thank you for many things. They say in life that you should never meet your heroes, but Prime Minister, thanks for introducing me to Billy Bragg, to your friend Billy Bragg, who was even better in person. And thanks for the Kessels and Mains Road and the Coopers Plains overpass, just $500 million or so. Thank you for being a good friend to Moreton and a good friend to me. Thank you especially to the Foreign Minister Penny Wong for facilitating the release with you, Prime Minister, of Scott Rush and the remainder of the Bali Nine. I thought I'd be leaving this place with that as unfinished business. Instead, Scott had his first Christmas in 20 years with his parents, Lee and Chris, in Gracehall. I've enjoyed the work of the Brisbane Olympics and Paralympics Games Committee with Minister Wells. There have been some challenges with both the professional parties of protest in my state campaigning against the Games, but we will get there. We will get there, and I look forward to Queensland and Australia putting on the best Games ever in 2032. And mainly, Prime Minister, thank you for being a steadfast leader, the sort who makes a promise and keeps it. I've loved seeing family law and education policies that I was involved with developing in opposition, now Australian law and practice. As the parties of protest become louder, while the walking Jeremiah and his echo acolytes become more shrill, I take great comfort from seeing a Prime Minister focused on delivery. And while the coalescence of whingers on the fringes gets louder, I know you will steer our nation on a sensible, egalitarian path towards sustainable prosperity. There's a quote I love in your mentor Tom Uren's autobiography, Straight Left. We consider it a moral obligation of the fit to look after the sick, of the young to look after the old, and of the rich to look after the poor. This is a good platform for any re-election campaign, and I know the wind is swinging in behind Labor as the fourth quarter gets willing, so good luck. In conclusion, I note that when I made my first speech in 2008, my long-separated mother and father were in the gallery, sitting together. They're both gone now. You're young and then you're not. Mum's been gone for over a decade, but I still associate her with Canberra, probably because I always found the time to call her when I was away from my own family. Peggy Perrett always gave me good advice, especially after she passed away. She was a strong guide, and I hope I always made you proud, Mum. I see my brother Simon and his partner Michael, with the beard to rival Dan's, up in the gallery. They were here in 2008. I'm glad that there are some things in this world that have not changed. This can be a hard place to maintain your pride. I've seen politics land blows on all sorts of people. It's a tough place for those who come here seeking some work of dignity and noble purpose. As a species, we do have that capacity for infinite kindness and infinite cruelty. But the everyday people of Moreton lean heavily towards kindness, and the poorer they are, the more kind and generous they seem to be. We must, through times of disagreement, remain focused on bringing people together. As I said in my first speech, I wish to remind all Australians that the price of harmony is hard work. Each and every one of us must be eternally vigilant when it comes to community relations. We must knock on all our neighbours' doors and offer a helping hand. We must build understanding, trust and friendship, irrespective of race, religion, age or political beliefs. So if you're a representative of the Australian people and you exploit conflicts overseas to stoke fear and tension and divide people, then hopefully you will have no place here. Labor will continue to fight against racial and religious vilification and those who use division for political gain. Now, they say the only thing you can count on in politics is your fingers. I had just turned 42 when the 42nd Parliament started, and I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. But now here in the 47th Parliament, as a 47-year-old, I come to the end of the best job in the world. There are always more dogs than bones in the world of politics, and I was never great at snarling or howling or learning to work with wolves, but I've enjoyed it. And so there comes a time for a bit of contemplation as the early promise of life melts into later regrets. I'm so thankful to the mighty Labor Party for gifting me some sense of completion, almost satisfaction. Not quite, obviously, because the work of equity and freedom is never done. But thank you all for letting me help our wonderful cause. Some say politics is a grubby crawl towards noble things that you never see, but I've seen plenty of good in this place. I'm looking at it now. We only get one wild and precious life, so we must find some usefulness. And the big purpose of every life is little kindnesses. So I hope to distribute some more kindnesses in a different place. It really has, Deputy Prime Minister, been an excellent adventure. And I love yous all. So after welcome, sorry, soon and thanks, I'd like to make my final words in here a bit of poetry from the always pithy Dorothy Parker. My land is bare of chattering folk, the clouds are low along the ridges, and sweets the air with curly smoke from all my burning bridges. Thank you.
And on indulgence, I call the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Well, in his first speech in this place, the member for Moreton promised to bring some poetry and literature back to the chamber. And in his final speech, he's done both. And Graham has certainly held to that commitment. I'm sure that all members would agree that whatever the issue that was before the House, it's always worth listening to the member for Moreton's contributions to the debate, both for the substance but also for the way that they were presented, with humour and insight and, importantly, with heart. Graham has been an extraordinary colleague for a long period of time. He has friendships quite clearly across the chamber, some, as we've learnt today, with Darren Chester, closer than we knew about. But I'll leave that to those two to deal with. whenever you visit Graham's electorate of Moreton, two things came across. One was his pride in his community, everything he's worked to deliver over 18 years as an MP. I reckon my visits to Moreton probably up around 30, 40 at least. Everything from multicultural events to mains and kessels. The most expensive overpass anywhere in Australia, it's got to be said, more than $300 million on an intersection. But Graham was absolutely determined to do so, and what it has done is unclog that part of Brisbane, a real investment that we went through the processes and found that, bizarrely, it did stack up in terms of productivity and the difference that it has made. But that was just one of the many projects that Graham has advocated, from level crossings to a range of infrastructure projects to community infrastructure projects as well in the electorate. The other thing that you noticed about Graham, and I'm not sure the name of the shopping centre in Sunnybank Plaza, where we did a walk through shopping centres. I'm someone who does that. Some people would advise against doing this sort of activity, but I do, because it's the only way that you actually get engagement with people that is not pre-planned. And with Graham, on at least 2 occasions in that shopping centre going through, there are 2 things that you noticed. One was the people he knew, which was a lot of them, and that showed a member in touch. The second was the people he didn't know, the genuine warmth and engagement and interaction and respect that he had. Whether they were raising issues that were easy to solve, whether they were raising problems to be dealt with, Graham dealt with them in exactly the same way, respectfully and with courtesy, and aiming to do, if he could, what he could for them, or where he couldn't because of differences, where he thought that the issue they were raising was not one that he supported, he'd tell them up front as well. We did multiple multicultural roundtables in that very diverse electorate as well, and for my first cousin Helen, who lived in Sunnybank, and I'd get regular reports about Graham's effort as a member. The thing about Moreton was he won the seat off the Liberal Party. He won the seat off the Liberal Party and held it. It has been a marginal for all of that time, and he has extended the margin out over a period of years. And when we launched Julianne Campbell's campaign for Moreton, there was the Perrett army that has been translated over to work for Jules, and no doubt that she will follow him as a member for Moreton and will do a fantastic job. There was some misinformation out there from the media as well about Graham's pre-selection. I want to put this on the record. I went to Graham and said, mate, if you want to run again, you're absolutely in. He was like, I'm done, I've made my contribution, it's time. That he had come to that decision himself, and I respected that, even though I was disappointed. But he also did something that not everyone in this place does. He lined up a fantastic successor in that electorate who can carry on with his legacy. To Lee, thank you for what you've given up as well. Thank you for lending us your hubby for such a long period of time. And to Stanley and Leo, I think a definition of good parenting is defined by the fact that Stanley is a South Sydney fanatic. That shows good parenting, particularly given Graham's St George. Well, that deserves compassion because it's been a hard time and it's going to get worse as it goes on. But to the family, I've been to Graham's home on a number of occasions, and watching the boys grow up has been a great privilege as well. We will miss your company here, but we will treasure your friendship forever. I am pleased. I've never seen anyone more excited than in Billy Bragg's dressing room when he got to meet Billy and insisted on 1,000 photos with Billy Bragg. I look forward to an ongoing friendship and engagement with you, mate, and look forward to catching up for a beer after the election.
I'm going to give the call to the honourable member for Cornwall.